Good afternoon and welcome to the September meeting of the Seneca County Industrial Development Agency. We do have a quorum today, so we'll start. First item on the agenda is everyone received a copy of the IDA meeting minutes from our last meeting on July 6th. Does anyone have any corrections, additions, comments? Yes, Matt.
I think we should have them all read again because Dave did such a good job last time. Okay, just a thought.
So, have a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Motion carried. The next two items are the financials. One is the financial statements through June of 2023, and the next one is financials through July of 2023. Since we did not have a meeting in the beginning of August, we'll cover both reports now.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm basically going to do a summary review of the financials that were provided in the meeting packet, starting with June of 2023. On the balance sheet side, total assets measured $4,260,000. On June 30th, that's a decrease of $187,000 from our May 31st position. Liabilities and equity totaled $4,267,000. As of June 30th, again, a decrease of $187,000 from our May 31st position. On the profit and loss statement, ordinary income measured $281,000 as of June 30th. That's an increase of $100,000 from our May position. Ordinary operating expenses measured $228,000 on June 30th, an increase of $32,000 from our May 31st position. Net ordinary income measured $52,000 on June 30th, an increase of $67,000 from our May 31st position. The May position was a negative figure, that's why that $67,000 number is reflected as an increase. Other expenses were $21,500, an increase due to the Willard study for expenses which occurred in June. And net income overall measured $36,629 on June 30th, an increase of $45,000 from May 31st. Included in the meeting packet for the June financials are quarterly graphs, which reflect financial trends from first quarter of 20 through second quarter of 23. They consisted of asset trends, liability trends, liability and equity trends, income trends, and expense trends. Going forward to July 31st numbers, balance sheet totals, total assets for $4,266,000 on July 31st. That's an increase of $6,000 from our June 30th position. Liabilities and equity measured $4,266,000 as of July 31st, and then an increase of $6,091 from our June position. On the profit and loss side, total ordinary income measured $336,000 on July 31st. That's an increase of $54,000 from our June 30th position. Ordinary expenses measured $261,000 on July 31st, an increase of $32,000 from our June 30th position. Net ordinary income measured $74,889 on July 31st, an increase of $22,760 from our June 30th position. Other expenses, $14,543 as of July 31st. That is due to expenses incurred for the Willard study. Bottom line net income measure 38,846 as of July 31st. That's an increase of 8,217 from our June 30th position. And included in the meeting packet for July financials are monthly graphs, which reflect the following trends: Seneca County comparative assets, Seneca County IDA comparative liabilities and equity, and Seneca County IDA profit and loss comparisons. Again, that's a overall view summary of the June and July numbers. Are there any questions?
I just have a couple items to add. So the two major income sources for those 2 months was the $100,000 payment from Del Lago in June, and then the $54,000 from the county in July. On the Willard study, we have not yet received the ARPA funding from the county and haven't yet submitted for reimbursement on the remainder of our state grant. The state grant.
How much was the ARPA funds coming in?
$20,000. So I'm planning to follow up with the county manager on what the process is for getting those funds dispersed, so we'll get that taken care of. And then once we have spent the remainder of what will be the state grant funds, we'll submit that reimbursement, and then any remainder out of that will be obviously coming out of the IDA fund. So just to kind of give you guys all an update on where we are there.
Any additional questions or comments on either the June or the July financials? Hearing none, we'll do these two separately. One would like an approval of the IDA financial statements through June of 2023. Motion to approve?
Motion. Motion to approve.
Yeah. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Motion carried. And then need a motion to approve the financial statements through July of 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next on the agenda is a presentation on the North Seneca Solar Project.
So I will turn it over to Camille and Rob on behalf of Savion Energy to talk about the company and the project and to answer any questions that you guys have at this point. I do want to point out there is no official application yet for assistance for this project. This is just sort of an introductory, get to know them and more about the project.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having us. My name is Camille Kaner, and this is Rob Panache. He's counsel with Young Summer. And actually, let me go ahead and pass out some materials. Sorry, I forgot to do that earlier. And I'm going to start by... Oh, gosh, okay. And I apologize, I don't quite have enough copies, so if you don't mind sharing and looking over each other's shoulders a bit. I'll put one right here. Ernie, I know you've seen one iteration of the project layout so far. So I'm with Savion, and Savion develops utility scale solar and battery energy projects. We're actually owned by Shell, and we have projects and employees all across the country. In fact, we have projects in, I think, 33 states, employees all over the country. I myself am based in New York. Our headquarters are Kansas City, Missouri. Right now, our development pipeline is 35 gigawatts, which is 35,000 megawatts. But specifically, the project we're here to talk about today is the North Seneca Solar Project, which you can see on that map. So this project is an up to 90 megawatt project in Seneca County, of course. It's actually in the townships of Waterloo and Junius. So that blue line that runs right through the project there, that's actually the town line. So above that is Junius, below that is Waterloo. I think approximately 30% of the project footprint is in Junius, with the remaining 70% in Waterloo. And then that same blue line is actually it's National Grid's existing transmission line, 115 kV transmission line that runs, again, parallel or adjacent to the town property line. So basically, you can see all the panels laid out in the layout there, and those connect via medium voltage collector lines. They all go to a central project substation where it gets converted to that 115 kV voltage, and then it connects directly into New York's electric grid where the energy gets distributed from there. Before I talk about timeline, do you have any initial questions about project footprint or infrastructure?
I guess, how far along has this been with the towns of Waterloo and Junius?
So yeah, on timeline, we have had this project in our portfolio for about a year now. So in that year, we've been doing site acquisition. So everything that you see on that project layout, we currently have real estate agreements with those landowners. And then as soon as we got those wrapped up, we've been doing studies on these parcels, various environmental studies. So that's actually why you don't see panels covering the entirety of the acreage. There's certain elements like wetlands that we've decided to avoid in our design. So we have permitting studies going through the rest of this year. So we're hoping to submit a permit application by the end of this year. So permitting, of course, takes a bit. It's a fairly long lead item. And then separately, we have to run interconnection studies with the operators of the grid. So right now, our best guess is that the project would start construction at the end of 2026 and come online at the end of 2027.
The total acreage that's involved with this is what?
It's 827 acres that are outlined, and then panel coverage is much less than that.
How many panels?
I don't have an exact number of panels, but it's 90 megawatts worth of panels.
So to talk a little bit about Savion and its parent company Shell Oil, that is, they're the...
Yes, so we're one of the basically renewables branch of Shell, but we retain our Savion name. We have our own separate headquarters and operations.
And was Savion an independent company prior to Shell acquiring?
Yes, it was. It was acquired by Shell a little bit over a year ago.
And when was it founded?
2019, but it actually assumed a different name, Tradewind Energy, prior to that.
And the founders were?
Of Tradewind?
Yeah.
I don't know
They're
the names.
out.
They're no
They're
longer
out.
with
They're-
the
they're
company, yeah.
So is this land currently under agricultural use
No, actually less than 60% is ag land.
because of the wetland issues?
Not even. Some of it was just not farmed previously. But yes, some of it is to avoid impacts.
So I don't know what Waterloo and Junius's approach is these days. Again, Steve, to your question, how have the towns addressed this?
Yeah, I guess they've been involved with this, but especially
Yes.
during,
We got a meeting coming up on the 11th, I think it's 11th of September.
Yeah, we have a local agency consultation
Yeah, we've
meeting.
just been involved and they've been informing us and stuff like that. And then they had to deal with
I think they may be asking about the local siting approval process, so why don't you talk about how that works for a
Yeah, sure.
project
So
of this size?
originally in New York, there was an Article 10 stream, so I believe a different project, the Trelina Solar Farm, initially started its permit application via Article 10. Article 10 is no more, so it's been replaced by a process called 94C, and that whole permit stream is overseen by ORES, which is the Office of Renewable Energy Siting. So basically, it's a state level permit, but that being said, there's a very in-depth approach that developers and applicants have to take to engage not just town officials, but also the community to gather feedback and incorporate that feedback to the maximum extent in project design.
So my understanding is that that's a state statute that lets the state supersede local control.
Yes, but we have to abide by all the local ordinances and codes.
Wait a minute, can you do both? Can you supersede them and also, what if they say no?
No, you can request waivers to the towns for certain codes, but ultimately it's the towns and input from the state board that says, no, the applicant has to abide by this code, or, they've requested a waiver and it's been granted.
Or not. If it isn't granted, then the state will supersede the town?
They can.
It can supersede.
That was Article 10, but Article 10 is, again, I'm not up to speed on the new.
ORES can do this, this 94C process can do the same thing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that the idea is not to do that, right? Not to have a project that has no solar, right?
But the C-Corp process is then done through the state, going through the town, who
And there's a
does it?
process to solicit local municipality input, and if there's objections, to
Yeah.
address those objections and that sort of thing.
There's an intervenor fund,
Yeah.
more than half goes directly to the towns. So the towns could get separate counsel, or they can work together and get one attorney, one consultant to review the application on their behalves.
I mean, the question will be, why does Shell require a tax break from the county?
Rob, maybe I hand it off to you to
Ye-
talk more about tax.
Sure, look, it's a fair point, but Shell is just like any other business that they're not gonna do something unless there's some kind of profit behind it and to make it work. So what Shell is, I don't wanna say it's not relevant because I know it is to the board, but it is relevant, but whether it's Shell or, to example, the Trelina project is NextEra was that?
All fair,
Yeah, they were bigger,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, Shell, it's a little different, but not,
Yeah.
the difference in scale, not of kind, I think. And, the IDA's function has been, or can logically be, a provider of incentives for projects that would not take place if it were not for those incentives. So that's kind of the mantra here is, yes, we will forego tax revenues in the case of projects that could not otherwise proceed. It gets tougher and tougher to answer that question when it's Shell.
And it's also, when you're giving those things up, what are the benefits to the community? And usually it's jobs. There's not really any jobs created here when you get all done.
That's right. But to get to that, there's
And I'm not trying to beat it up.
No, but this is
these
a
questions.
conversation.
Yeah.
We're happy to do this
Yeah.
because,
And if I could just
Yeah.
weigh in really
Yeah.
quick on jobs, it is 165 direct full-time jobs during the construction period of the project, which is
But that doesn't count.
a year and a half.
We don't view that as being material in the long run. You're right, absolutely, but it's not material, even if they are local employers.
no, it's all fair, right? But there may be one or two that doesn't change a community,
Right.
right? But on the other, I wasn't gonna get into this, but on the other hand, a facility that brings in 100 to 200 jobs also brings in kids, brings in other things that use facilities. Minor, don't get me wrong, this is a minor point.
Mhm.
But the point being is that, yeah, these don't bring in jobs, but they do not bring in the need for services either. So that, and I don't mean it in a way that it's what you get is good, but whatever is obtained in taxes or pilot or host community payment is money that could be used for something else. Because, for example, the school district, you get one or two jobs, you're not bringing in, if you did, you might bring in a couple kids, but you're not gonna bring in kids to the school district. The only service that we may need is fire protection, but we pay fire district taxes anyway. Roads, if we're gonna have a road use agreement, we'll address roads. So just the idea being that one other point to be made with these projects is, yes, they cost a lot of money. Yes, there are some breaks that are sought, but we're not a burden on the services. Again, don't think of that as like.
We understand.
Yeah. Then the other thing too now is the state has provided a new assessment model. So these projects used to be assessed one of three ways, really. A cost approach, reproduction cost minus depreciation, income approach, or the sales approach. Now the state has a new piece of legislation, it was actually in 22, that says all these projects need to be assessed using a income approach, the discounted cash flow analysis. The way that works is, just so you know, 2 years ago I had no idea what this meant, so now I had to figure it out. So it's called the DCF model, discounted cash flow. So what it does is it says, all right, I'm gonna see what the income is in year one over 25 years, and then that's the value of your facility. To put it in perspective, this project, assume it's a $100 million project. Because I'm gonna use easy math, it's easy for me. $100 million project, assume 70% in Waterloo. So 70 million of the construction cost is in Waterloo. The assessors used to be, okay, the assessed value will be $70 million. Easy, whatever, that's how they did it. Now, with this assessment model, which is state law, the assessed value on this would be $12.5 million. So that's what the income tells us. Sarah, I sent everything to Sarah, we could talk about it, because just to give you an idea, it kind of reset what would be the value of these projects. Okay, so that's the first part of it. And the way that discounted cash flow analysis works is in year one, you have your most cash flow. In year 25, you obviously only have 1 year left. So the value, and this is based on assessment, I'll go to fair market value. In year one, it's worth about 18 million just in Waterloo. And in year 25, it's worth just about $2 million. And in Junius, it's 9 million to $1 million, just to put it in perspective. What makes this better for us and everybody is there's a little bit more certainty about what the values would be post-pilot or without a pilot. What makes it bad is that every year the amount goes down. And so to put it in perspective, the taxes the town would get in year one, if we were just to pay taxes, would be 41,000. And then because if we did a 15-year pilot, right? Or if you just paid over 15 years, it goes 41.2, it goes up for 3 years, and then it starts going down in year 7. It goes from 41.2, 41.3, 41.4, then down another one. So the most you're ever gonna get for the town of Waterloo would be 42,000 in taxes. With the pilot, we wanna go up. So the way this model now works is that if you were to pay the taxes, year one is the most you're gonna pay over a course of time. And then if you pay with your pilot, eventually those two cross. And one of the things we talked about with Sarah was, what year does that cross? It crosses at about year 18. And so what I understand too, is that you guys only support 15-year pilots. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that we like the idea of the pilot HCA approach for 2 reasons. One, it provides a lot of certainty to us, but it also provides the certainty to the town and school district a little bit more. And the county gets it, but the county's budgets are so much larger that it doesn't really impact them as much. So, and the other thing you try to do is, we want, and the same thing Charlena did too, is, you have your pilot, but then you also have a separate host agreement, mitigation fee, so that the towns can get more money towards this. That's the concept in a nutshell, and I'm sure you heard all the same thing from the folks at Nextera when they came in.
I think, looking at, really this solar project, really solar projects as a whole, kind of summarize a couple of the issues that the board has faced, has been either one, we're here really to look at what essentially what the tax rate is, basically. I mean, that's sort of our job, but we don't, we're not the site approval process. We've had issues with a company, companies coming in, putting in solar installations, especially places without zoning and that type of thing. And, should we be involved? How much should we be involved with the actual approval of the site, the equipment, the setup, that type of thing? So that's a concern that we're here ultimately approving a financial part, but where do we fit in with the whole project physical approval, and the towns and the county and the state and all that other bit? And then the second really becomes, you know, what is the proper tax rate, the valuation, the whatever. There's been, especially with the community solar, it's the typical, you know, NYSERDA and how much per megawatt and those type of things. But it becomes sort of a, I don't wanna say some voodoo type thing where there's, let's kind of pick a number out and what's, hey, you know, Wayne County, what are you doing? And what are you doing, Cayuga County? And so here we are, we don't, you know, we don't represent the towns or the county or the school districts, but we're here sort of stuck in the middle. So it's kind of an awkward spot. So that's where I think, you know, some of the board members, between who really approves this and is the community behind it, because we don't necessarily want to give our stamp of approval if, you know, people are lining up at the door with pitchforks and saying, no, we don't want this project at all. And then again, what's the appropriate tax rate, knowing that if you didn't do the project, what would be the taxes, you know, the current one, so it's better than nothing, but what's really fair and appropriate, and again, there's a lot of, you know, a lot of strange economics behind it.
First, before we go, I just wanted to say, so that NYSERDA thing that you talked about,
Yeah.
right? So this new assessment model that I'm talking about, what happened is that NYSERDA works with tax and finance. So it's no longer, because that, remember, if you looked at that says, all right, if you have this project, maybe you should charge between, you know, 4,000 and 7,000 a megawatt, depending on where you are, right? This now is not telling you what the megawatts should be, it's telling you what the fair market value will be. Same, I think that we don't have the ability to see how they figured it out, but I'm believing it's the base. So NYSERDA gave information to tax and finance, and then tax and finance came up with this model that, you know, you plug in 5 numbers on this Excel spreadsheet and it plugs out these numbers for you. So you're right, and just the other thing you said too, which makes a lot of sense on those small projects, a town without zoning, there's no decommissioning agreement, there's none of those things in place, and so I'm sure I don't know if you do it here, but other county IDAs say, well, where's your decommissioning agreement? Where's your this and where's your that? Because you're just trying to protect the community as well. So, you know, one part of the state siting process that is good is that it requires the oversight, it requires the decommissioning. It also requires that the company, you know, I mean, we talked about Shell, but if it wasn't Shell, does the company have the wherewithal to, one, build the project and also to operate the project? And do they have the experience to do so as well? So those are things that at least we know. But as far as the tax rate, this model has now established what would be the high point of what, you know, can be supported. And that's, you know, when I can send you some of this stuff too, but when we look at what we proposed and what we're thinking about and what your guys usually require, we're not far off as far as what a tax break is. So just don't worry about the specific numbers, just to give you an idea. The taxes in Waterloo, and by the way, there's so many assumptions in this. The assumption is that the tax cap doesn't change and it's always less than 2%. So taxes go up, you know, I don't know what you guys do, but you're less than 2% usually on your taxes every year, right? Because you have to be. So I assume a tax increase of 2% every year. So over 25 years, the taxes would be $7.4 million. What we had proposed is a bifurcated 4,000 per megawatt. And again, I just want to give you the idea of where we are with the numbers. So that was 7.4. We're at 6 million with our proposal right now. So yes, it's a tax break of $1 million, but it's not, it's something that can be shown. And I just wanted to give you an idea that it's not massive, but it is a request for a tax
But
break.
it also isn't gonna go up in the future where other things might. If you did housing development there, if, you know, other taxes don't typically sit there. Here, it's gonna stay steady for 15 years, so it's not just the break today, it's the break going on.
No, it goes, so, well, that's interesting. I think, I don't wanna argue against myself, but I think,
And
no.
I'm glad if you tell me it isn't, because we'll make sure we have the pilot set up that way.
No, so the way it is, no, so the pilot rates go up. Here, let me just give you an idea here. Look. So if you look at this, right, if you look at the numbers here, all right? So these are the actual taxes, all right? So if you're, let me just hand this out. If you look at what the taxes are gonna be, the actual tax break that you would be seeking goes down every year. Because the way the assessment model works is the value is the highest in year one. Because that's the discounted cash flow analysis
That's the assessment on this, taxes on this project.
Yeah, Waterloo, the second page is, yeah, the second page is June. So yeah, the tax, that's, I guess what I was trying to say too, is that if you wanna look at it, your tax break is largest in year one. And if you were to agree to longer than you could see it, if you were to agree to longer than 15 years, the actual tax breaks go down every year. So I was just using the
But
total
you're- yeah,
numbers.
but and again, it's a
Yeah.
different animal, it's hard, what is it worth 10 years from now, who knows? But I don't know too many people here whose taxes are going down every year.
You're not wrong.
And
Yeah.
so one of the benefits that comes with a pilot is the ability to know, this is gonna be the most I pay, and frankly, it's gonna go down each year. And, you could argue your equipment's depreciating, a lot of the value is on that equipment, and so it is worth less. But some other use of it, and let's face it, to be honest, Waterloo isn't sitting here with all kinds of growth and all kinds of building going on. But if you were in Farmington, you had all kinds of housing development going on, to do something that's gonna go down in value every year and taxes down every year, you would be building homes that would have assessments going up every year, and you wouldn't see it decreasing. We don't have that today in Waterloo, but in most communities, a lot of communities, you would. So that's one of the other factors. Now, what happens in Waterloo 10 years from now is another question.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things we're not, our pilot is not a proposal for the numbers to go down. Our proposal is for the numbers to go up by 2%. So,
And I
yeah.
appreciate you putting the numbers
Yeah.
out here and something we can see and talk about,
Yeah.
so that's good.
Yeah, and it's, again, I mean, what we're trying to do here is come in early, right? We're not coming in, as Camille put it, the application hasn't been submitted. We just wanna be, upfront
Yep.
and start a conversation before we even submit an application. Just, to get everyone's, ideas of what you're thinking.
How long is your power purchase agreement?
20 years.
And so you've got fixed income for 20 years, except for the fading of the panels to produce, right?
Yeah, so the fixed income, it actually, so for 20 years, your price, you get paid two ways. You get your energy prices, which fluctuate, and then you have what's called the REC contract, the renewable energy credit piece. That number stays the same for 20 years. There's no increase on that at this point. I mean, there's a discussion to do that in the future, but right now you have fixed income, fixed assets for fixed income for 20 years. And just to be honest, a lot of times we, as developers, we're trying to get 20-year pilot because of that. So you have the same 20-year. We know what we're getting for 20 years. But,
Yeah. So we used to be, we looked at the top, was like 10 years, and then it kind of became 15 is the norm. Now you guys are pushing us to 20. So,
just
and if I was you, I'd be doing the same thing. And we're just trying to take an honest look at, as Steve said here, we're sitting here giving out tax breaks that impacts our school district. And so, that's quite a bit upon the scenario to come up with. We're making some pretty good assessment decreases, and what is the benefit to that? A long time ago when these things started and windmills and everything else, you had community agreements, you had so much of the energy going to the community. There was a lot of different things, and this thing has matured and changed and morphed. And, frankly, you guys and Shell and everybody else is a lot smarter than we are. And so we just stop and say, okay, what are we really giving up for what we're getting? Usually we can argue the job piece of it pretty well, and it's worth it. We don't get that here, and so what are we getting? Other than obviously we're supporting solar and things like that. So we've just sat back and said, is this really a benefit to the community or not? And at what point is it a benefit, and what point does it go away? What you don't get, you have the philosophical aspect of it's solar and it helps the environment. On the other side of it, we are giving away a pretty good tax break here, and we're not developing jobs, and it's gonna create housing demand and other things that builds with it. And so if we're putting initiatives in it, we're also a tourist area, that, I'm not sure a lot of people go by every one of these and says, God, I love the look of that. And so, there's a downside to that too. So, it's, I'm not opposed to it, we're not negative. I appreciate your coming here early and having a pretty open dialogue. I appreciate you giving us your numbers. We're just trying to make some assessment here.
One other point, and is that, so I'm sure the cost of this project is more than $100 million, right? But just, not that this is the only thing, but if we have a $100 million project cost, we will be paying $1 million administrative fee, which I suppose we're not creating jobs. But what could happen with the IDA's funds is that there could be money that's set aside for job creation. I do know in other communities.
Yeah, and we need to look at that, and it's, can we do that? Can we take those fees, and other than pay salaries, can we create some other benefits to the area? Because that's a good thing. We have to look at, we don't exist unless we generate pilot fees, so we love it, we need that. At the same time, in a way, we're being greedy, saying, we're getting paid so much to let this project happen, and what is the benefit to the community? Your point of taking that money and helping do something else is also a good point. So these are things we're just trying to make a better assessment as we go forward. So I appreciate you coming in early and providing us the information.
One of the responses from the public is the visual impact of these facilities. What's your company's sort of best practices design approach to mitigate those concerns?
Yeah, and a lot of that is mandated by both 94C and local town codes. So we have to adhere to all setback requirements from roads or residential structures. And then on top of that, we have to submit a vegetative management plan as part of our 94C application, which shows the minimum threshold that we have to maintain over the duration of the project's life cycle that sheds a lot of the view. So I know, and Sarah and I have talked about, there's a project nearby, which I want to clarify is not a utility scale project, did not have to go through the same rigorous procedures as a project like this. And I know people hate that project chiefly for the visual impacts. And unfortunately, and it's hard to backtrack as a developer of a different scale and ball game entirely, but we don't even have the option to build something frankly as ugly as that project.
So just refresh, we said this 15 minutes ago, 94C is the successor to Article 10.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, has replaced Article 10.
So we're not
In
being
terms of
able to
solar
see-
projects specifically.
It's renewable energy projects.
Renewable energy
Yes.
projects.
And a lot of solar projects in the state, I'm not actually entirely sure about the Trulina solar farm, but a lot of them have storage associated with them, and I wanted to clarify early on that this particular project does not have a storage component. There's different kind of fire and safety implications that go along with storage. I actually have an initial meeting with some local fire departments this evening, which again is just to have an early introduction, get them in the loop, get their feedback on the proposed project.
Is that an option in the future?
The storage option, it's not, no.
Yeah, not through the
It's
90, yeah, once you get the 94C and you get your
Yeah.
connection.
It's a very, 94C, I've developed now in New York and California and Ohio, and 94C is, and Rob can attest this, it is very particular in that applicants have to reach a very, very high design threshold, environmental study and design threshold, in order to even submit an application. Like a lot of the things that you see on that map are things that in other states and other permitting processes, you wouldn't even have to get to that design level until closer to construction.
And when was that passed, 94C?
a little over a year ago.
It's been a couple, it's
2 years. But a lot of the projects like Trelina that started with Article 10 are basically grandfathered under Article 10, so they don't have to make the switch. But a project that's new in the last, I guess, maybe 2 years has to go through 94C.
if you wanna look it up, it's ores.ny.gov. That's the website, and then you'll see all the different permit applications that are out there as well.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
And last thing I'll mention, I know we have the local agency consultation meeting on September 11th. That is open to the public theoretically, but it's really with, town officials, county officials, and then apart from that we have, and this is a mandated community public event, but on September 20th we're having just an open house, again, open to the public, at 6 at the town of Waterloo's Recreation Center. Anyone is welcome to come. It's gonna be maybe 8 of us from Savion and our permitting consultants there to answer any questions, and there will be boards and tons of information, so feel free to stop by.
So what is it about our area that is attractive for the development? Is it just that power line going through it?
It's many things. In fact, we have an entire dedicated team at Savion that just does siting efforts. So all the time, we hear, we want these projects, we just don't want them here. And it's hard to impress upon people how difficult it even is to find a site that meets these certain thresholds. The main ones are transmission capacity, and land availability that is fairly contiguous, because if these projects are about 1,000 acres of land, and to find contiguous land is really, really challenging, especially in a state like New York, which often has smaller parcel sizes, weird disjointed parcel sizes. It's a very difficult task, because as soon as you get spread out, the losses incurred on those lines to gather that electricity in one place and get it on the line, it becomes no longer financially viable.
How many different landowners are involved in this project?
There's 5 primary landowners, but then on that map, there's landowners that we've had to get an easement with to run the medium voltage collector line, so we won't have any panels on their parcel, but like a 50-foot corridor to bury their underground lines, so you won't see them at all, but just to bury our lines to connect to the project.
And again, none of this land is in current agricultural production?
No, 60%, less than 60% is.
Less than 60%?
Yes.
How much, you mentioned other projects in general. How many other projects in New York have you either initiated, are underway, or have completed?
I personally develop 7 projects. Portfolio as a whole, we probably have about 15 in New York. And those are both solar and battery energy storage projects, and some coupled.
And how many does, I guess, in the US, how many does Shell have?
In the US, so 35,000 megawatts divided by, roughly 100 megawatts per project, so 350 projects.
Of all those, one of the best you gave out. No, I'm just kidding.
Also, I'm gonna leave some corporate flyers, and then I have some FAQs that I think are pretty helpful, so I'll leave those, and then Sarah, you have my contact information. I'm more than happy to answer questions, so feel absolutely free to reach out to me.
Wonderful. Thank you both.
Thank
for
you.
your
Thank you,
time.
guys.
Thank you, it's informative.
Sarah, do you want me to leave these just right here?
Yeah, you can leave
Okay.
them there, I'll distribute them.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is the discussion request for Keystone Bill's extension of sales tax exemption. So Sarah?
So, Keystone Mills, as you all know, was approved for incentives for the construction of an organic grain mill facility. And that project, because of some challenges with NYSEG and capacity, has had to scale back a little bit. But they've also had some challenges lately just with construction timelines and delays. So what is being requested is not a change to the incentive package itself, but to request an extension of the deadline by which they have to use up their sales tax exemption. So they expect construction to be completed, they said sometime summer of 2024, so they're requesting that they have until December of 2024 to use the remainder of their exemption.
I don't have an issue.
Yeah, seems reasonable.
Questions or concerns? Okay.
No. So, with no other questions, need a motion to approve the resolution to extend the sales tax exemption. Second?
Second?
Kelly?
Mr. Brusso?
Yes.
Mr. Brownell?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
Mr. Kime?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley and Mr. Lott absent, motion carried.
Next item, typical item would be update from Jeff Shipley, Seneca County Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if anyone has anything that they want to say on their behalf. No? Not, next one, Ernie, could you give us an update on the Seneca County Board of Supervisors?
Now, the one thing is, we've got the new supervisors in working, I guess everybody understands and knows about that. So what's going on right now, the most is we're working on the budget. And all the heads going in and we're done one part. We're having some work sessions on Fridays and Saturdays. So the whole counties are, the whole organization's involved in it, so. That's what's going on right now, the hardest is the next budget.
Oh, yeah, that's always the fun part.
Might there be a way to kind of spend some time with a new county manager to go through IDA procedures, rationale, logic? I mean, more than just sort of, here's the IDA statute, read it at your leisure. So I would think, there's things we do just in the course of business that aren't transparent to anybody reading the IDA manual. It's following the rules, of course, but we're wrestling with a lot of stuff that it would be great if he could get up to speed with.
Of course. We've had some conversations with the county manager already and definitely have plans for additional, sort of training and orientation about what we do. Are you specifically requesting that the board as a whole sort of have a
No,
meeting
not
with him, or
necessarily.
I'd
just,
say a few people.
just more
just a
generally
few.
for him to get familiar with all the workings?
I
Seems
think it would
like-
hurt to have, a couple people and you meet with them, I think the whole board to meet with them would be a little much, but that's just my opinion.
There are certain significant events in the history of the IDA that he probably should be aware of, and kind of how the decisions were made and what the implications have been, and how the IDA is operating today in Seneca County.
Well, even in the recording of this meeting, and particularly the way Tom articulated the responsibility we feel about not just handing out tax breaks willy-nilly, I think is an important thing to communicate.
This isn't the last time we'll have this conversation about this
Yeah.
very subject.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, so we will connect with him. There's a few things that we've been working with him pretty closely on so far, but definitely have plans to try to sit down and more formally go through sort of the IDA mandate and what exactly that means and how we can, best partner with the county.
Any questions for Ernie? Not any other business?
Yeah, so just one thing I want to make everybody aware of. So we have the date set for the next public input session for Willard. That's going to be Monday, October 2nd, 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. Again, South Seneca High School has been gracious enough to host us. So that session is going to be sort of a recap and sharing of the results from the first public input session, which was really the community coming together and giving their ideas of what they would like to see at Willard. And then the second part of that is going to be that MRB has compiled all of those results and used it to help craft a draft master plan for the site. And so both of those will be unveiled. There will be a formal presentation at 5 p.m. And then afterward, it'll take more of the format of an open house like last time, where people can come up and provide additional comments or feedback on what they heard in the presentation. So we actually just submitted the ad today to the Seneca County Shoppers, so we'll be running one of those again for 2 weeks right prior to the event. We'll push it out to the Willard Task Force members and have everybody share it on social media. We had a tremendous amount of traction from that. And then we have a press release that is ready to be sent out. So that's all in the works. And then we're already planning the dates for sort of the final presentation and wrap up of the study. That's expected to happen the week just before Thanksgiving. I've talked with Steve about this, and I've talked with the new county manager and the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. We are planning to have that final presentation be a joint board meeting between the Board of Supervisors and the IDA board. So it will be open to the public, it will be live stream. Obviously, we'll extend invites to other particular members of the community, elected officials, that kind of thing. The goal would be to host that probably again at South Seneca, as long as we can make the logistics work. So right now I'm just waiting to get responses back from the county manager and the chairman of the board on what dates would be preferable, because that is kind of a tricky week for the supervisors. They already have a standing board meeting night in Ovid that week. So we're trying to coordinate around that, but I will keep you all posted once we have a date.
Sarah, do we have any report from docs about how they've accomplished mothballing the buildings and what's going to be heated, what's not going to be heated? How
Everything
security-
is going to be heated because they can't shut off individual buildings. So everything's going to be heated at least through this winter, and I'm planning to follow up with them and find out what the commitment is beyond that. My understanding is that some of that hinges on the outcomes of the highest and best use study and how we as a community and as an organization wish to proceed with the site from that point on.
Well, what I'm wondering is, for instance, the supervisor's house down there, the water pipes broke in the basement and it ran for a week before anybody knew it. And I just have this sense that they're not gonna be really paying, it's not in their best interest to spend a lot of time checking on those buildings through the winter. We're gonna be responsible for all this, and it just seems to me we're not getting much information about how they're gonna handle it.
We're not. I don't think we are responsible for it until we formally assume responsibility for it.
I understand, but we're, just asking the questions may get enough attention to it so that we don't have some disaster that
Right.
happens and then say, oops.
I get where you're coming from on that. Even though we're having to go through Empire State Development for communication, they've been extremely responsive, and Docs has been extremely responsive to that. There are staff that are still continuing to patrol the grounds. I mean, the Historical Society was running walking tours all summer long. Obviously, they're not gonna be doing that in the winter, but thankfully, we have enough community members that are in close proximity to the site and keeping an eye on it in such a way that if something were to happen and it wasn't immediately brought to the attention of Docs, that we could, with pretty quick turnaround, bring it to their attention and have something fixed. So I'm not too worried about it. They've been much better stewards of this site, I would say, than the state has been historically of any of their other sites that have gone through this kind of
It's just,
shutdown.
a lot of times, just asking the questions kind of
Mhm.
keeps their attention to it as well.
Yes. And there have been instances, so there were instances this summer where there were, a couple of windows, upper floor windows broken out, leak house, and they noticed on the walking tours, and those were, next day boarded up to prevent further issues. So they are being very responsive to those types of inquiries.
Great.
They did have a theft there and they were caught, I believe.
Yes, that was a while ago. Yeah, they were caught.
Mhm.
When do we're gonna get a piece of paper or a stack of paper.
Mhm.
What happens then? Is it too soon to kind of ask that question?
It's not too soon to ask the question and to think about, but it's too soon to have a definitive answer, I guess is what I would say. So highest and best use study as a result is, in its final form, will have obviously a master plan, which really is sort of a blueprint for development going forward. But it'll also have recommendations on things like remediation of buildings. It'll have, you know, the operating cost breakdown and costs of remediation. It'll have recommendations for which types of funding and grant programs should be pursued as part of the project as a, you know, strategic whole. So some of those things, we have to wait for that study to be done in terms of the timing and the recommendations of, you know, are certain places essentially ready once the study is out to be marketed immediately, or is there remediation that needs to take place first? So we're still, you know, we need to wait for the results of that to really figure out complete next steps. Something that you both know as members of the task force, but that this board hasn't been made aware of yet is the chamber brought in and solicited a proposal from a company to do a PR strategy for the Willard redevelopment project. And it's my understanding from conversations with Jeff Shipley that he's gonna be bringing that proposal to the chamber's executive committee and seeing what their thoughts are on the chamber funding that piece. And so that would be a next step in the process, and part of what would come out of that strategy has to be informed by what comes out of the highest and best use study. So there is an order of operations that we're trying to go through, you know, trying to explore in general what programs and things are out there and be aware of timelines, but make sure that we're not doing things out of order in a way that's gonna be counterintuitive to the development going forward, if that
Are there other entities that have expressed an interest here? You know, is there anybody else coming up and say, hey, that's great, you're looking at that, but we wanna do this with it, or we wanna buy it? Is that
Nothing serious. There were, in the early days, a couple of sort of informal cases of interest that I had heard. I mean, there are people that had, you know, people that came with lots of ideas to the input sessions. There have been, you know, housing developers and people that have been involved in the process and have had a chance to solicit input that way. But the state is not interested in circumventing the community on this type of project. They're putting all of their eggs in our basket in terms of the highest and best use study.
You know, what I'd hate to see us do is spend a ton of money way down the road, and, you know, if something good comes along, great, but spend all that money and do everything, then have the state say, well, thanks for your time and the work on this, but we decided we got this deal over here we've been working on.
No, they're not, and they have communicated, any case when they've received interest directly from somebody, they've communicated that with us. And actually, a few weeks ago now, we had a meeting between Empire State Development and MRB to start talking through what the initial feedback was at that public input session and try to give the state an idea of here's the direction that we think this is gonna go. Are you guys still okay with this?
Yeah.
And there were no concerns raised at that time, so I don't expect them to step in now and say, oh wait, this is not at all what we can support. So we're still very much on the same page there.
Maybe this is a subject for Jeff, but, you know, if in a perfect world, the day that study comes out, there would be a website that would have the results of the study there for everyone to look at, as well as pictures of historical activities at the facility. I think that's the kind of thing that public relations can get out in front of, and simply hiring a PR firm isn't enough. It's to say, what are the most important things first out of the gate?
Yes,
And-
so.
And I'm not involved in the chamber's efforts, but there should be a futureofwillard.com or something that should have all those photos that have been, that Craig Williams has assembled. It could be a real asset in drumming up support and giving the public a sense that this is not gonna just lay fallow for the next 6 months or 12 or 18.
Well,
I wish we could be doing that, that's all.
We are. Our website has a
Well, it should be
couple
a film.
pages that are dedicated specifically to Willard, and it's possible that that may not be the best place for it to live forever,
It should be Willard specific.
but it's there for now, And, you know, part of what we would look for from recommendations from a PR firm would be, you know, is there a better place to, you know, showcase, whether it's its own website or on a different platform, that information. But we do have the website. It's got all of the information related to the study as of now. I'll be updating it this afternoon with the dates and everything for the next input session. But to your point, Bruce, the proposal that the firm put together for Jeff highlighted, and this is why the highest and best use study needs to be done, is, you know, we need to be able to identify, in terms of the PR strategy, what the appropriate timings are and what the audiences are at each timing. So there's gonna be times when your audience is just gonna be sort of regular community members of Seneca County, and there's gonna be some awareness raised about the project, versus when you're transitioning and really ready for full-blown marketing to potential developers. And so that's part of what would come out of a PR strategy, would be defining those timelines and those groups and what's the best way to share that information and approach those individuals. So more to come on that.
Anything else on other business?
No.
Therefore, next item is I request a motion to enter into executive session under Public Officers Law, Article 7, Section 105, for discussion on the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property where publicity could substantially affect the value thereof. So, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's okay, Tom, thanks. Good luck.
Wow, we're back from executive session. Good discussion. There was no action coming out of executive session. Having no more business before the board, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I want these.
Motion carried.
No.
Adjourn.